Welcome to another You Comment, We Respond. The first hand we're going to talk about features the legendary John Juanda.
JJ.
Played on the EPT. He had Queen 7 in the small blind. They were three-handed. He limped. What's his name in the big blind?
Jensen.
Yeah, Jensen, in fact.
Jensen.
Frederick Jensen in the big blind checked his Jack 10 option. The flop was Queen... No, it wasn't. It was Jack 7 deuce.
There you go.
Giving top pair to Jensen and middle pair to Juanda. It went check, bet, call. Made a lot of sense. Turn was a queen, vaulting Juanda to the lead. It was wonderful for him.
There were two spades on the flop.
There were two spades on the flop, right, of course. Juanda checked. Jensen bet again. Juanda raised. Jensen called. The river was another 7, giving Juanda a full house. Juanda moved in effectively for Jensen.
Yeah.
And Jensen tanked for a long time, eventually called and was out of the tournament.
Yep, interesting hand for sure. Let's hear what y'all had to say. Michael Seago says, poker guys, this is 2017.
It is.
Knowing Juanda, he probably is the type to limp his entire range in the small blind. Maybe he mixes it up, but there are tons of better jacks and 7s, deuces, jack in his limp call range. He may also decide to check call sets on the flop to protect his range. Also, you guys were wondering why Jensen bet 2/3 of the pot on the turn? Jensen.
Yeah.
It's because he was trying to set up a 2-street value betting line with the intention of checking any river that wasn't a jack or a 10. So he goes bigger because he's trying to check river. So I think the more important thing is to talk about the first part.
Okay.
Which is, we were saying that Juanda would be raising certain hands out of the small blind. So I actually went back and checked, because some players are doing this, some players are not.
Right.
It's very much player dependent. Also, when they're three-handed, it might be different. They have a deal in place, that might change it too. But I did go back and look, and Juanda had been limping. It seemed like, at least for the several times when it folded to him in the small blind three ways, he was limping, it seemed, his entire range. So, Michael, I think you're right about that.
Right, but that doesn't mean that he would play better jacks like this to the river. Speaking of better jacks, when we're thinking about Juanda's range here. So we don't worry about that as Jensen on the river. We don't think Juanda has ace-jack when he moves in on the river.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're talking about his check-raising range on the turn.
Yeah.
We can... Still, we don't think he's going to check raise that often.
I don't really think he's ever going to check raise with a jack on the turn.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But I actually agree with that. Okay, what do you think about this bit with Jensen betting 2/3 of the pot on the turn?
It's Jensen still.
Jensen.
Still Jensen.
Always Jensen. Every time Jensen. But Jensen betting 2/3 bigger because he's planning on checking back most rivers.
I think usually he would check back most rivers. I think this is a way to protect against spade draws and make sure you get value from the spade draws. And I think that's the majority of why he's doing it. Yeah, and I think maybe we didn't say that in the video, but in the podcast, I'm sure we did.
I hope we did, but this is a great point for sure.
Thank you, Michael.
It is an icky spot if you get check raised, like what happened.
Right.
And you're like, ugh. Okay, Nick Oliphant asks, if, say, the 3 of spades comes on the river, should Juanda check? If he does, should Jensen feel like he has to bluff with his jack to win the
Still
pot?
Jensen.
Well, no, but I'm doing Nick Oliphant.
Oh, he thinks it's Jensen.
Nick Oliphant wrote it as Jensen,
He
so
did.
I said Jensen. Obviously, it's Jensen, but I was being true to the
That's
the
fair.
form.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the question is, should Juanda check if a spade comes?
Yeah, that's the first question.
I think probably.
I think he kind of has to.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to get value from worse hands at that point. I mean, you can.
Jensen is a pot-sized bet left. What are we going to do? We're going to... I mean, maybe we move in because we figure we're going to call anyway, but then we kill all the bluffs, and it's harder for him to call with a lot of hands, right?
Right, and the next question is, should Jensen move in as a bluff if Juanda checks?
That's an interesting question.
It's an interesting question. I think the answer is probably no, because now all of Juanda's check-raising range is beating us for value. So if he doesn't have spades, then he just had a random bluff.
Well, but that's why you'd be moving in, actually, because all of his check-raising range is
Yeah, but I don't know if
value,
Juanda's really going to check-fold a two-pair type hand.
I don't know that he is either. That's the question, right?
I think it's probably not likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not, especially because they've made a deal. They've tightened up the money differences now. It's easier for Juanda to make this call if he wants to make it. The ICM implications are much less anyway than they otherwise would be. Probably not, but it's an interesting thing to think about, right?
Yes.
Nick Stupp, huge Kish game moment down under.
Is that Australian?
I'm not sure.
Is that what that's supposed to be?
Sort of Australian and South African, sort of like they had a kid. And
click right up there to check it out.
Yeah, okay, so here's what happened anyway. Daniel Cates opens, that's Jungle Man with 2 jacks.
That's Youngle Man. And he's got two yaks.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
You know, in fairness, as I read it, they were hard J's.
Yeah.
Hard J's. He opens with 2 jacks in middle position. Sam Trickett calls in the big blind with ace queen of diamonds.
That's not true at all.
That is not true at all. There was a call. Gus Hansen called on the flop.
No, he didn't. Gus Hansen called. Sam Trickett.
I know what happened. I'm just missaying
Sam
it.
Trickett
I got it.
3-bet.
I got it.
Okay.
So Gus Hansen called on the button with queen 6 of clubs. Sam Trickett 3-bet out of the small blind or the big blind. One of those.
Yeah, to how much?
To 15,000.
Nice.
Yes.
This is evidence that we do one take most of the time.
It really
Yeah.
is. So anyway, Cates calls, of course, with jacks. Hansen folds his queen 6. The flop is 9-10 jack with 1 diamond. Trickett makes an interesting check, and Cates has top set and bets, gets called. The turn is a 4 of diamonds, bringing a flush draw for Trickett as well. Trickett checks again. Cates bets again. Trickett calls. The river is an offsuit 8. Trickett bets 125,000 Australian dollars. Cates thinks for a little bit and calls with top set, even though there's 4 to a straight out there. Trickett, of course, wins.
Yep.
All right, here's what the folks had to say. We had asked, what other bluffs can you kind of come up with it for Trickett?
Because we only came up with ace king of diamonds.
Right, so we said, what else is there? So some people gave us some thoughts.
Okay.
Brandon Shiles says, king seems like a good bluff candidate here. We only need to bluff half the combos, 3 out of 6, of it too. Maybe just without the king of diamonds.
Okay. I don't know if it's necessary to turn king into a bluff here.
That's the question I have.
Yeah, because, I mean, Cates, I guess, has plenty of sets in his range because he bet twice.
Yeah.
But he might also have ace jack in his range. He might have king jack in his range.
I think so.
Stuff like that. I don't know. Kings might be too good.
He might even have a hand like ace-10 in his range, honestly. If you're betting a jack, you might decide to bet ace-10 for a similar reason. You're up against a similar range, you know, and the range is either way ahead or way behind.
I feel like that's pretty unlikely to bet ace-10, but
I can
he
see
might.
It's a wetter board on the turn, too.
True.
We might bet it one more time. So, yeah, I feel like the same thing. Like, I'm worried that kings are too good to turn into a bluff here. So often it's going to go check on the river, and we're just going to have the winner. We may not need to turn it into a bluff. I get, though, that we're blocking the nuts, which is pretty sweet.
That is pretty sweet.
All right. Michael Merritt says, I agree with the analysis up until the river. You both suggested that Trickett's river lead is good, but I think Trickett should continue to check his whole range here. It's very unlikely for Trickett to have king-queen as played, and Jungleman probably has a full 16 combos. Sure, he misses value when Jungle has a hand like Jack-Jack, but he's opening himself up to being massively exploited by a bet, folding his entire range on the river. If Trickett bets ace-queen on the river, he must call a jam, as this is the very top of his range. By check calling, he is protecting his kings and aces that played this way and avoids being exploited.
Those are good points.
I like this comment.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, these are good points. However, I don't think Jungleman's really pulling the trigger on the exploitation too often there. I think he's not balanced enough, I would guess. He probably has more king queens than he has bluffs if he actually moved in the river here.
I don't know if that's true or not, but it's possibly true.
Yeah.
I would say that, I don't know, it's an interesting thing. First of all, there aren't a full 16 combo because as Trickett, we actually have a queen.
Yeah, it's 12 combos.
We're down to 12, but still, the full 12, I completely agree with.
Yes.
You can absolutely have that. I don't know if we can be massively exploited, like Grant's saying, but even if we can be, we can just have this be the plan, which is we bet call, and then we can't be massively exploited, right? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Right?
It just
It's
happens
the top
to be
of our range.
for more money.
So like the times he has us beat, cool, he gets to double through us. But if he's going to have some bluffs in there too, then we get to call because it's the very top of our range.
Yeah, and that's great. So yeah, if we do end up bet calling, and this way we get value from the sets as well, which may well check back the river.
The problem is when we check, it's just so likely Jungle has something. He bet the flop in turn. He's got something so often. He's just going to check it back like all day long, and we miss out on value, which we got here. So it's a weird spot, and you can be in a pukey bad situation.
Yeah.
But that's what No Limit is about. Like you put yourself in spots where sometimes you can be like, you hate your life.
Right.
And you throw the chips in or you fold, and either way it sucks.
Right, that's life, you know. But those are good points. The last hand we're going to talk about today is Daniel Negreanu versus the Online Prodigy. Click right up there to check that out. Got a rare glimpse of Nano Noko in the wild in that one. It was pretty cool.
Natural habitat.
No, his natural habitat is playing 48 tables online, actually.
Right.
Yeah. So he's against Daniel Negreanu in this spot, not his 1-2 regs he's playing online. And it gets a little tough when you're playing against Daniel Negreanu sometimes.
Sure.
In this hand, the loose cannon in the big game opened to 1,600, which was a really big raise, which we thought was pretty important.
4x.
Yeah, 4x. Negreanu called with 2 7s. Nanonoko's in the small blind, makes it 6K with 2 queens. Only Negreanu calls. The loose cannon somehow folds 9s. I don't really know why.
I mean,
the flop is deuce 3 jack, goes Nanonoko's, he's out of position. So he's going to bet. Yeah, he bets. Negreanu calls with his 2 7s. The turn is a miracle for Negreanu. It's another 7. Nanonoko bets again. Negreanu does some speech play stuff, calls again. The river, and also brought a heart draw on the turn, by the way.
That's right.
The river is the ace of diamonds, and this was the most confounding part of the hand. Nanonoko went for very thin value, bet again.
Bet big.
Negreanu called and won with a set of sevens.
Negreanu said, I think you might have 3 aces now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call. Okay. So, say noob before you leave says, honestly, I think you're simply wrong about Lou's pre-flop range. He is very much a GTO type player and will have a pre-flop 3-bet range that is balanced and includes some suited connectors and suited ace-X.
While that may be true online, we have to believe that he's paying attention to the game and he's going to try to exploit the game in a way that maybe he wouldn't online, because there's just 6 players there. One of them is the loose cannon. That's the one you should be exploiting the most, and that's the one that makes us think he doesn't have a balanced range here. We think he's going with whatever hands he's 3-betting against the loose cannon's 4xing range.
At least the ones that are not bluffs, right?
Yeah.
And I guess these are the bluffs, but I don't know if he's doing it any bluffs at all. I think he's raising to try and get it in with her because she 4x's it and she hadn't been 4xing it.
Right.
She was, I think the very first hand, was it you or someone else said she made it 1,000,
yeah.
right? So this is a big departure from that. And maybe part of it is because she's seeing how much other people are raising, but I don't think other people are 4xing it either, right?
Right.
She's raising 9s to 4x because she doesn't want to see a flop with a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going on. But she would do that with jacks. She'd do that with 10s. Hands that Lou really wants to see.
Yeah.
And he would expect that those hands are not going to fold. Somehow she folds 9s correctly, but that
Right.
can't be right.
And the bluffs wouldn't have very much pre-flop fold equity against her range. Well, you wouldn't think at least, but somehow she folds 9s. I just think, I like your points, and I think that generally that is how Randy Lou thinks and plays.
Absolutely.
But I gotta believe he's smart enough and adaptable enough that he's not gonna do kind of a spew play against this obvious exploitable amateur.
We don't know for sure. This is our best guess. But
Yeah.
but ultimately I agree with Grant and not with you that he's going to change his range based on the fact that she changed her bet size. One thing Randy Lou, I'm sure, is very clued into his bet sizing.
Yes.
He's playing 1,000,000 tables of no limit
Right.
online. Seth Barr asks, is there any chance Lou's river bet was actually a bluff designed to get ace-X of hearts hands to fold? That at least makes more sense to me than the crazy thin value he's trying to get.
Now, it's good that you're trying to find reasoning behind this, because as we explored in the video and in the podcast, it's really, really hard to get called by a worse hand.
Yeah.
So I guess it's good to think about this, but I don't think that can be the case, because if you think about the entire way the hand played out, the only ace-X of hearts hands Negreanu should show up with here that he might fold are ace-4 and ace-5 of hearts. Because he called on the flop, he can't really have any other ace-X of hearts except for ace-deuce or ace-3, which he's not going to fold because they're 2 pair now.
No chance he's going to fold those. Yeah, I agree with Grant. I think he does show up with both combos of those. I think he probably is going to float with the gut shot, the ace, and the backdoor flush draw on the flop. Probably a lot. Probably maybe even 100% of the time.
And then he can't fold the turn when the heart comes.
Especially because Nanunoko's always betting the flop.
Right.
And Negreanu knows this. And he really might check the turn a lot, right?
Right.
So I think he really is going to show up with both those combos, but it's only 2 combos. And then besides that, the ace is a bad card for us, not a good card for us, as Nanunoko.
Right, so it can't really be a bluff because Negreanu could easily have ace-jack here the way he played it. He could have the ace-deuce and ace-3 of hearts, like I said. He could have sets, you know. There's way too many hands in Negreanu's range that he won't fold to this bluff that he got here with. The only ones are the ace-3 and ace-4.
So
or 4 and 5, excuse me.
Yeah, so we just have to be trying to get value from the king-jacks of the world.
That must be it.
Which is hard to do also. It's incredibly thin. We don't really like the bet as a result. We think this is a check. We understand why he's making the bet in a normal situation, but when the loose cannon opens, we think it does, and this is us disagreeing, I guess, with the previous commenter too. I think it does narrow Nanunoko's range so much that he just has to check this river and strongly consider folding if Daniel bets, even though it sucks.